Joining us now for this month's Outside Looking In perspective on regional and Philippine trade issues is British Chamber of Commerce's Chris Nelson, who is joined today by a special guest, the British Embassy's Director of Trade and Investment, James Thackeray. Gentlemen, welcome to Market Edge. Good morning.
Good morning, Mimi. Yes, very good to be here with James.
All right.
How are you?
Good, good. Hi, James. Good morning. Welcome to Market Edge.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I want to start with Chris. You're probably monitoring this big news as well over the weekend, the Israel-Iran war. As Israel debates a response to the attacks, its war cabinet is saying it would respond in the manner and at the time of its choosing. Do you think the U.S. and Western allies, including you guys, the UK, can stop this slide into an all-out war? We have just heard some developments from the G7 meeting of the richest countries being called and, calling on restraint. So what are your thoughts on this, Chris?
Well, everyone's asking for restraint. Tensions have been rising, which obviously has an impact. We've seen it in the discussion in the earlier part of your program. Oil prices have been going up. This is obviously having an impact on the stock markets. And of course, going forward, what people are looking at is what's the impact on interest rates in various countries. It's very hard to say. Obviously, we'd all implore and would appreciate restraint. Israel is saying it will study how it's going to do it. Iran, as you've noticed, said that they consider the response to be over. Let us see. In context of how we can assist, it's very little that anybody can do on those macro developments apart from pray and hope. I would just reiterate that inflation is a key concern in many countries, which we've discussed on the previous program. And in that, I would say that the UK is working hard with the Philippines on supply chain. And in particular, as we've discussed before, on the supply of meat and particularly pork. In that context, we would once again say we would like to see the complete implementation of the Executive Order 50 and no, obviously, alteration or approach on the minimum access tariff, which could actually reduce supply, therefore potentially have an impact on inflation. So, in summary, we all hope for restraint, and what we can try to do is how we can assist, say, the Philippines with supply opportunities.
Hopefully, the tensions in the Middle East don't impact supply chains that you mentioned, Chris. But I'm very curious, aside from the local issues that we have here, which is inflation, plus how the UK has been supplying the Philippines with meat, I wonder, have the various British chambers of commerce, around the world, because you have one in almost all countries, have you guys gathered and started having a discussion on what happened over the weekend?
No, I think what we do have coming up actually is the annual meeting for British Chambers of Commerce. We would express concerns. What we will try to do is what can we do as a group, working also, of course, with the UK government. I've just mentioned we'll have the next AGM of all the British Chambers. That's actually scheduled in June in London. At the same time, there is a possibility there could be some engagements. And I think what the British Chambers will be trying to do is how we can continue to reinforce trade. How can trade continue? Obviously, there's been tensions in the Middle East leading to shipping to be rerouted via the Horn of Africa rather than through the Middle East area through the Suez Canal. So I think our approach has got to be is how we can work again with our government, how we can assist in continuing to seeing trade grow, because that's good for not only, obviously, UK Philippines, but world growth trade in general.
All right. And speaking of trade, James, what do you think does this new geopolitical narrative imply for the global economy and the markets? The UK economy just started growing slightly, 0.1% in Feb, increasing hopes you guys might be on your way out of recession. I know that the strength is coming from production and manufacturing, especially in the auto industry, but does this derail your hopes and what you expect to see for the rest of the year in terms of trade?
Well, we hope so. As we all know, in conflict, there are impacts on all of us in one way or another, and one of those ways is through economics and the ways that we are all interlinked through trade, and that poses a challenge for everyone, particularly through cost of living. at the British Embassy here in the Philippines, we believe that trade is a really important engine for prosperity and peace, and we're hoping that we will be able to reinforce that through continued promoting restraint in this conflict. When it comes to the UK, it's positive news. We are happy to not be in a recession and that we've seen some positive growth rates. We'd obviously like it to be higher and we'd like to continue to grow. This is something that every country in the G7 has struggled with recently, and the UK is doing pretty well in comparison to them. But I think on the whole, we need to be wary of this to make sure that we don't count our chickens before they've hatched, and to make sure that we recognise the threat of growing conflict, and make sure that we are reinforcing our trade to make sure that this is going into the future to be a longer term plan and route into further prosperity and peace. So yes, a challenging time for everyone, a challenging time for the world market, but we believe that trade and the peace and prosperity that comes through it are the way out of it.
James, the World Trade Organization is forecasting goods trade to pick up this year by 2.6% and 3.3% next year, following last year's 1.2% contraction. Are you confident that this narrative will stay, despite all of the black swans and the geopolitical tensions and, stickier than expected inflation numbers?
Yes, very hopeful. I think there is a lot of positivity in the global economic profile, despite the conflict. And, much of the time, the reason for that increase is because of inflation, but actually there's a recognition across the world that there is a need for increased trade, both in goods and services, to bring us all closer together and make sure that we are de-incentivized from conflicts such as this, and have the incentives to work together as closely as possible.
All right. And so Chris and James, for both gentlemen, the Philippines, US, and Japan are building a so-called Lon Corridor of Investments. What are we expecting from the UK?
Well, let me take that first and hand over to James. The UK has expressed a great deal of interest, particularly obviously in renewable energy, also on the infrastructure side. I'd also like to say, from the Chamber perspective, we've just recently had an event on cybersecurity. The UK is a leader in that, and that's actually a very key and important area for the Philippines. It's actually been noted as one of the priority bills for this administration, and in that we see that as important both for the private and the public sector. We just held a recent event with the ICT and one of our members, CyberQ UK, and we will continue to push forward on that. So we expect the investments to be there. I've just made in a previous time a reference to the fact that we will have the British Chambers of Commerce annual meeting. At the same time, the embassy, through actually the UK Trade Commissioner, Martin Kent, who's based in Singapore, are looking to do a series of events in the UK in June. And that's to encourage more companies to do trade and investment. So I think the UK is looking at that, and let's not forget, and I'll hand over to James, they're looking to upgrade the trade relations between the UK to what they call a joint economic community, or a JETCO.
All right, James, you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, let me first start by saying this is really exciting news. I think it's brilliant that the Philippines is getting increased investment, particularly in this part of the country. I was actually just on holiday in northern Luzon, going through the rice terraces of Banawe and climbing up Mount Pulag. So really, really exciting to see that so much investment is going to go into such an amazing place. And the UK, I'll agree with Chris, has a huge amount to offer as well. So lots of the priority areas as part of this partnership are in infrastructure, as well as clean energy. And these are things that the UK has a huge expertise in. So there is hopefully going to be lots more investment from the UK, but even where there is investment from other countries, what the UK is brilliant at are third country cooperation. So we love to work closely with other countries to make sure that our expertise in some of these really critical infrastructure projects can help to support the successful implementation of them. So we're hoping to do lots more in this space, following on from this brilliant announcement. As Chris has mentioned, we have some of our own excellent announcements coming up soon in this year to further the UK-Philippines trade relationship, which we're really excited about.
James, while you do want to see the trade ties improve, there's a pending legislative policy seeking to raise the daily minimum wage in the Philippines. Local companies have already expressed worries about it. Is this a make or break deal for for UK investors in particular, doing business here?
I certainly think it will impact the decision of investors. It would make sense for them to. It would be an oversight for them not to consider it. But what I would say is that it is really important to have a strong minimum wage. The UK knows this. We've got a long, proud history of making sure that our workers across all parts of the economy are fairly paid and looked after by the government through a minimum wage. We were actually the third country in the world to implement a minimum wage, and earlier this month we have increased our own. So whilst it's important to recognise for any country that the minimum wage will have an impact on investors, minimum wage is there to make sure that the workers get a fair deal, and that's really important for the long-term sustainability of the economy and the country, which make Philippines a longer-term good place for investment. So there may be, some murmurings from investors, but I think this policy and minimum wage in general is there to make sure that the Philippines remains a strong source of investment. So we are supportive in that respect.
All right. And finally, Chris, every time we talk to you, it seems like, the key areas of priorities for the chamber would be pork, cybersecurity, and travel. You have travel talks coming up. They also know that you enjoy golf very much. They say a lot of the deals are actually sealed in the green. I think we have a photo of you playing golf.
Good photo. There you go. And there's our chairman, Bill Bailey, playing as well. Yes, we just recently had the British Chamber Golf on the 11th of April at Whack Whack. We'd like to thank one of our main partners. This time was actually FWD, but we'd also like to thank, we're very much supported by a wide range of sponsors. And we had 97 players. This is our 12th golf day. And I think it shows and reinforces both UK and Philippine companies, because we have obviously broad membership, over 300, and that does reinforce. And yes, it's a reinforcement again. And glad to thank you for mentioning our travel talks. This will be our 4th edition of travel talks. We're very confident. We want to see UK British tourists grow. We were at 8 last year. And we're looking forward to working with the Department of Tourism and highlighting key opportunities. So, yes, it was a good golfing day. And at the same time, we're looking forward to travel talks and growing relationships between the Philippines and UK.
And on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week. Great to see you. Great to hear your insights. See you soon.
Thank you very much. And a good day to you and all your viewers.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, James.
Bye.
All right. Now, a very quick